Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be looking at how to mix the low end of a song and how to get the kick and the bass drum really working well together. Okay, so let's dive into it. So I've chosen this song in particular because it's actually quite simple. Not many elements going on, it's quite minimal, so I'll be able to show you exactly what I mean about mixing the low end. So the two main elements we're going to focus on are the kick drum and the sub. If we just quickly look through this project, pretty much every single thing we can see has actually got some sort of like low cut on it, around about 100 Hertz. It depends on the sound. The only example of something that doesn't might be something in like a breakdown. So for example, just here in the project, there's like a sound effect. Just because it's kind of like a nature rain sound, I've just kept in a lot of the low end down there. But for everything else, we have just basically gotten rid of it because it's not really needed. So the only two elements that have got a lot of low end are the kick drum and the sub bass. So the kick drum on its own sounds like this. And then the sub sounds like... You can actually hear some side chaining on that, which I will go into in a minute. If I take the side chain off, it's just... So effectively what that is, that's just quarter notes. The note changes depending on like the chord sequence. So the problem we've got with doing this is the kick drum is on the exact same note as the sub bass. So we need to do something to try and figure that out. So I've just got an example of some commercially released songs, and we can actually have a look at what's going on in the low end, and we can apply that to this song. So first example. So if we look at that, we can see the kick drum is actually peaking around here. So somewhere between like 35 and 50 Hertz. So the sub is hitting around here, and the kick drum's hitting all the way up there. If we look at the next example, again, we can see the kick drum's peaking all the way down there. If we look at a song of a slightly different genre, so we can see that kick drum's a little bit higher. It's peaking around about here with the tail going down. So there's a few different ways we can go around this. So the first method, which I think is not the correct way to go about this, is to simply just put a high pass on there. So in theory it could work. So doing something like this in theory could work. We've got the kick drum peaking around here and the sub peaking around here, so not many clashing frequencies. However, the problem with doing something like this, if we play the song in context, because it's quite minimal, and with it out, you can hear the difference. We're actually losing so much energy, especially with this style of music. That low end is really quite important. So rather than EQing, one other way we could go about doing this is actually just to shorten the kick drum, because if we look at how a kick drum works, if I give you an example, if I time stretch this kick drum by a long way, you can actually see the low end of the kick drum is actually just all the bass. So you effectively have the transient around all up the top and around here, and then this big kind of like sound where the sub actually kind of like pitches down and tails off. Rather than putting an EQ on it, one thing we can do, which is actually probably a better way around it, we can just shorten the kick drum. So we can get rid of some of this. So if I just loop these two kick drums, so by shortening it, we're actually mimicking that filter by actually just making the kick drum peak around here. But for this genre of music, we don't want to do that because the kick drum is quite fundamental to the sound. So that's one way to go about it, if depending on the genre you're working on. We're going to have a listen to the two of them together. You can hear a kind of like a weird distortion happening. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a sidechain in. So with this sidechain, we're effectively ducking down the bass as the kick comes in. So if we look at the actual waveform of the kick drum, if we just zoom in here, we want to copy this pattern but in reverse. So we want to lower down the sub as the kick comes in and bring it back up during this tail when it ends. So if I engage this LFO tool, which is acting as the sidechain, we get something that's like, so you can see much more room. If I turn it off just now, you can hear there's kind of like a weird distortion thing happening. It's because they're actually just fighting for the same space. So that is how we kind of get the low end and the kick drum to work together. If I play the second part of the song, I've got a second sub that comes in, which sounds like, and again, we're going to have that same problem of fighting frequencies. So again, we're going to add our LFO tool on there. If I take the LFO tool off again, you can really hear that distortion. If I take the side chaining off this bass and play the section, it's very subtle, but you can kind of hear the distortion happening. And then if I put it on, really kind of like cleans up the low end and makes the kick and the bass really work well together.